Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Nomthandazo Mdunge. I would like to welcome you to our second new teacher engagement webinar about creating harmony in work through classroom management. We are really excited to have you on the call today and to have you on and to share some thoughts from our amazing speaker. They will assist us in understanding in details about classroom management, as most teachers find it hard to manage a classroom. I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, which is Prof. Shuti Khumalo. Prof. Khumalo is an associate professor at UNISA. He brings rich experience in social justice education, sustainability, and leadership. He is the author of 3 books and has written numerous journal articles, and he brought Global Education Board as well as South Africa Education Management Association. His contributions have led to global recognition through esteemed social awards. Prof. Khumalo, thank you for joining us today. To start off, please can you share with our listeners your insights on creating harmony through classroom management?
Thank you very much, Program Director, Ms. Mdunge, and also to the attendees. Indeed, it's a great, I applaud it for being a part of this webinar, and I'm going to take you through the fundamentals of functional classroom management. This is a very important topic because newly appointed teachers struggle with quite a number of issues, and that can be backed up by research. And I'm going to take you some few slides, and I hope that at the end of my presentation, you'll engage with questions. Chair, can you roll for the first slides after this one? My introduction is the dynamics in the schooling context has changed over time, and teachers are confronted in their classroom with behavioral, relational, and organizational challenges. Some learners would like to challenge the authority of the teacher. That is true, we know. It's not as like in the past 30 years or so, because of the kind of kids or learners that we have in the world, not only South Africa today. Then the question is, what do you do with disruptive habits to protect the academic agenda? Because my argument is that classroom management, managing a classroom is very critical, because if all classrooms are well managed, then it makes it very easier for the principal and the school management team to run the school. Managing the classroom well means you shall have won part of the battle and the challenges confronting schools. As I indicated, that research suggests that well-managed classroom build pro-social classroom conduct. And managing a classroom does not come automatically. You have to learn and also learn from those that are doing it very well. Next slide. I'm going to take you through the types of classrooms in different schools. If you see there, it's characterizing dysfunctional classrooms. The first figure deals with relational issues. You look at the picture there, you see some of the learners on the ground, some is pinning another one down. And that is a disruption in itself. And the academic agenda then is not protected. And the whole period is going to be a problem, because the teacher will have to sort out the challenge. And in terms of the curriculum coverage is affected. The second figure speaks to behavioral issues. And you look there, which is closely related to relational. Because relations is learners, how do learners relate to each other? And how do a learner behave even if he's alone? And you see that it's disrupting because he's jumping on the top of a desk and is a risk to the learner himself. Figure number 3 speaks about the organizational of the classroom. How is the class organized? If it's chaos, it's also problematic because learners can also be hurt. And then when learners are hurt by items lying all over in the classroom is very problematic. The teacher has to account. So this is the first figures deals with dysfunctional classrooms. Chair, can you take us to the next slide, which will deal with functional classrooms in a school setting? If you look at the classroom that is functional, it's classroom that is cordial, classroom that is civil. Figure 1, you see there, the teacher is smiling, learners are smiling, and they are engaged. The same applies to figure 2. They are now working as a group, which means it is highly organized and is functional. And it's the behavior is of the kind of a civil behavior. Then you go to figure number 3, which is also highly organized with pictures all over, and then charts, and then very appealing. Learners learning on the walls and doing all these things. Now, the next slide, Mdunge, can you take us through the next slide, where I'm going to take you through the toolkit on how to create harmonious classroom. Because as I indicated, that it is important that you create a classroom that is harmonious, peaceful, and socially just. The first key is self-management. It is important that a teacher must manage himself or herself first before she can attempt to manage a class and learners in the classroom. Because if it is not, the teacher is not exemplary, it's going to be problematic. For an example, if a teacher speaks with a cell phone in the classroom, she's not going to be able to call learners to order when they bring their cell phones into the classroom and start creating chaos. 1, you have to co-develop classroom rules and procedures. And a guideline, the list is not exhaustive. You can add that broad areas to consider in creating the rules and procedures to manage the classroom. Beginning and ending the period. Learners must know what happens when the period starts and the period ends. What happens in a group work? You have seen one of the figures prior to this slide in terms of the behavior of learners who are civil, organized in a group. Transitions and interruptions when changing classes and speaking. Learners must know how to interrupt when they are moving from one classroom to another. That must be sorted out through the guidelines, the rules. Use of materials and equipment to avoid mess and injury. How learners engage with the materials in the class. And then regulate the use of cell phones, because the school might have a guideline or regulations on the uses of cell phones, but the teacher must also cascade it down to the classroom level. How do you communicate with parents? But it's also very important that in developing these roles, you engage the learners. Never underestimate the intelligence of the learners that you have. Try to engage them, let them contribute in this rules that you are developing, so that they co-own them, so that they take ownership of the rules that have been developed. The next slide. The toolkit continues and build dynamic partnership atmosphere. Make each learner feel that they belong. It's very important. Develop a culture of respect in a mixed cultural environment. We know that today's classes are highly diversified. So it is important that you develop that culture of respect in a mix of diversity. provide flexible learning goals, because the learning goals, they focus the class, they focus the learners, they know what is expected of them in terms of the rules and also the learning goals, which means introduce strict time protocols to ensure that teaching takes place, so that you are not disrupted with your teaching. Introduce, model what you preach as a teacher. Make sure that you model what you are doing as a teacher. Have a private conversation with disruptive learners. Do not lambast them in front of others, because you might be shocked how socially, economically, and emotionally these kids are challenged. Create slogans such as, "We all belong, we are better together, this is our home away from home, and then I'm brilliant, bullying is not my potion." Start a day with an inspirational talk. I like this one, because before the class starts, you can have something with them and then inspire them. Know and celebrate their birthdays. It is important to know and celebrate their birthdays. The next slide. Chair. Sorry. Create, the toolkit continues, create a pledge. It is important to create a pledge in the classroom. I have read this pledge from Hugh and Lee in 2008 in the classroom. Now, this pledge, it depends on you whether they can start it from the beginning of the week on Monday for the entire week, or you can do it once monthly, or as it is required. I pledge today to do my best in reading and doing all the rest. I promise to obey the rules in my class and in my school. I will respect myself and others too. I will expect the best in all I do. I am here to learn and will do all I can to try my best. This is a pledge that you do with your learners. And then they will then know that they have pledged, and therefore they will try to behave according to the pledge, because it's part of commitment. The next slide, Chair. Then when the classroom is well managed and you have sorted out some engagement, some agreements with your learners and rules of the game, then this will benefit the class and the school at large. The learner will not be antisocial. Attendance rates will improve. The self-esteem will also be enhanced. It's a difference from the second one, which is self-confidence, because self-esteem is how one values himself or herself. Self-confidence will also be enhanced, believing in yourself, positive peer relationships, classroom engagement, optimism. The learners will be optimistic in the class. Focus on academic tasks. Academic achievement will also improve. School satisfaction. There will be positive attitudes towards school learning and the skills of self-management. The learner will also develop self-management skills and resilience to deal with crises. Because now when you've got those rules of engagement, when you have got shall have made it clear to learners how they must behave, it's part of self-management, because they know that once they get into the class, they then have to respect another learner. They have to respect the teacher. They have to follow protocol in terms of, for an example, asking questions and doing other things. And then they'll have resilience to deal with crises, because once there are crises, then the learner shall have learned skills. It is also going to assist to buffer them against the effects of negative home environment. Remember, some of these learners, like we indicated, that once you do not call them to order in front of other learners, you find that they've got emotional challenges, they've got social challenges, they've got problems from home. But once they are taught how to behave, how to do things in a classroom, then it is a buffer against the effects of negative house environment. And they can then take these positive behaviors that you have taught them. Do not underestimate these habits that you are teaching them in the classroom, that they can transfer them not only to their communities where they come from, but also outside in the school, but during break and all these things. And the next slide. This is my references that I've consulted, and then the final one is the chair, just to say thank you very much for the participation.
Wonderful presentation, Dr. Prof. Khumalo. Your insights here are very essential for young teachers, and I'm sure our audience will find it very useful. A reminder to our audience, please remember to add your question for Prof. Khumalo in the Q&As. Our next speaker for us today is Dr. Beverley Feldman. Dr. Feldman is an educational psychologist and senior lecturer at UNISA's Department of Psychology of Education. With a 23 years experience in teaching and school psychology, plus 8 years experience in academia. She is committed to enhancing teacher well-being. Her heart resonates with educators, feeling her passion to nurture their welfare and success. Dr. Feldman, we are so glad you are able to join us today, and we look forward to hearing what you can share with our listeners today about creating harmony through classroom management. Dr. Beverley, the floor is yours. Please, Doctor, unmute your mic.
I'm so sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session this afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all. Next slide, please. Thank you. And before we begin, I would like to just applaud you for being a teacher, because while teaching is a very, very demanding job, you also have the honor and the pleasure to impact the lives of children every day. And by impacting children, you impact their families, society, communities, and the world. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Prof. Khumalo spoke about maintaining a healthy classroom and what happens essentially in school and in your classroom. I'm going to talk to you today about how you create balance in your life so that you have harmony. And harmony speaks about bringing many different things together to create something beautiful. So we're going to look at how do you maintain a work-life balance and create sustainable work-life integration. So these are two concepts that I would like to challenge or reframe, but we'll get there. Next slide, please. Thank you. So work-life balance, we think of it in terms of managing what we do in our professional lives, what we do in our personal lives. It's our families, our classrooms, our school, and it can become hectic. It can become very demanding and very difficult to manage. But now we also think about it typically as two different sides of a scale. Work is the side and life is the side. But that's not really true, because your work is part of your life. And so the reframe that I would like you to think about is that your work is part of your life. It is not separate from your life. And so let's just have a look at our, before we go there, thank you. Let's read this. I'm going to give you some time to read the quote by Steve Jobs, please. And as you read it, maybe just think about something that stands out for you. So two things that stand out for me is that firstly, your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the second thing that stands out for me is that the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Next slide, please. Thank you. So having said that, I would like us to reframe work-life balance to addressing the challenges of maintaining healthy classrooms and balance in your life in general, because your work is not different to it. And to manage your classroom, your workload, and create a sustainable and good quality life of which your work is a part. Next slide, please. So my talk is going to be given to you in probably two parts. The first is why. We look at why is life balance, why is well-being important for you, particularly as a teacher. Next slide. Thank you. But before we begin, can you just tell me, what do you teach? Please, somebody. I'm just going to take the first 2 or 3 responses. If I can see them on my screen, great. If I can't, Ms. Mdunge, will you please just tell me what people have typed in, please? Just 1 or 2. What do you teach?
Beverley?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. They are
Yes.
asking about they wrote their phases only here on the Q&A.
Okay, so you teach grade 2, or you teach phase intermediate, or you
Yes.
teach senior phase, anything else? Okay, that's
They
fine.
just wrote their phases.
Perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. So a teacher has got many tasks. The norms and standards document says you have about 7 roles, right? Next slide, please. But in your classroom every day, you basically have 2 primary tasks that you have to do. The first one is you need to deliver the curriculum. It's subject focused. It's fueled by your instruction and your methodology, how you teach your subject, and it's guided by the content that you teach. But while you are delivering the curriculum, you are also very involved with another very important job, which is interacting with your learners, and that's the human aspect of it. So it's quite learner focused. It speaks about the connection between you and your learners, and it is relationship based. So these patterns I'm talking about are patterns like, what is your pattern with your class? Or do you just shout at them? Are you quite aggressive? Sit down, do your work, do what you need to do. Or do you have a more of a talking style and everyone is relaxed and calm, right? It's about how safe or threatened they feel in your class. What is your relationship with your learners? Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a teacher in your classroom, you have tremendous influence, and your influence impacts your learners. So where's your influence? You have control over the environment you create in your class. Is it safe? Is it threatening? Is it busy? Is it like Prof Khumalo showed? What does it look like? What does it feel like to be in your classroom? You control that. You have influence over that. Do you make the curriculum or your subject accessible to learners? What is your teaching approach? How do you connect and speak to them? How do you support and extend them, right? That's where you have influence and control. And in turn, that impacts the learners. They receive what you're giving to them. So your influence impacts the learner's experience of learning. Do they like the subject? Do they like learning? Do they enjoy coming to school? The learner's experience of their relationship with you. Are you friendly towards them? Do you make them feel accepted? Do you make them feel terrible about themselves? Is your classroom a welcoming environment? And of course, this develops in the learner's feelings of safety and competence. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'd like you to imagine your influence as a droplet of water that's creating ripples that are growing and expanding in the spool of humanity. Henry Brooks says, a teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops. Many of us, all of us, are influenced by the teachers we've had in our past, and some of them impacted us beautifully, and some of them traumatized us and impacted us very negatively. Next slide, please. So I have a question for you. Which of these 2 vehicles requires more fuel? the little red car that's only transporting one person and doesn't look like it can go very far, or the huge airplane transporting many passengers? Probably the airplane, right? The airplane would need more fuel. And that is a lot like your career or your profession as a teacher. On a daily basis, you are that airplane transporting learners to new destinations, new knowledge, new areas of growth. But you can't go there on an empty tank. If you don't have enough fuel in your engine to get them where they're going, they probably won't arrive there safely. And as a human system, so these two vehicles, the little car and the little airplane, they probably only need petrol as fuel to get there. But as a human, you are a complex system and you need much more than that. Next slide, please. As a human, you need fuel for your mind, you need fuel for your body, for your emotions, and for your soul. And if you don't have fuel, if those tanks are empty, you're not going to have any energy to do the important work that you are doing as a teacher or expected to do as a teacher. Next slide, please. So in our classes, I think we very often feel like this. We're overwhelmed by the work, the administration, the forms that have to be completed, ATPs, children that have different personalities, different behavioral styles, and we often do feel like this. Click, please. And when you're feeling like this, it probably means that your tank is running empty. You feel dysregulated and your relationships are suffering because you're angry, you're stressed, you're frustrated, and so you become relationally ineffective. And remember that this is impacting your class. So the effects of that over a prolonged period of time, if you're feeling like that every day, you may likely experience depression or burnout, conflict, anxiety, poor relationship, stress, not getting along with others, and your self-confidence takes a knock. On the other hand, if you feel like this, if you feel quite regulated and quite calm and in control, and you feel like you are able to cope with anything that comes your way that day, then your tank is probably filled. Because you feel connected, you are strong inside yourself. Prof. Khumalo spoke about self-management. This is your self-management. This is where you are strong, anchored, stable, secure inside of yourself, ready to take on all those challenges and demands. And in turn, you end up having healthier relationships with the learners in your class, with your colleagues, with any of your stakeholders in the school environment, and your family, your friends, your partners, and the people who are in your personal life. Next slide, please. So Carl Jung said that an understanding heart is everything in a teacher and cannot be esteemed highly enough. One looks back with appreciation to the brilliant teachers, but with gratitude to those who touched our human feelings. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is the vital element for the growing plant and for the soul of the child. Next slide, please. So now we get to part 2. We've answered why it's important to create balance and to improve our well-being. Now we're going to look at how do we do this? How do we create this balance, improve our well-being? Well, just like you do your planning and prep at school, we also have to schedule time for it. And there are some beautiful natural things that we can do that fuel and energize our heart, our mind, our body, and our soul. Now, in the 19th century, some time ago, a guy called Robert Owens decided that in your 24-hour day, you should spend 8 hours working, 8 hours on recreation, and 8 hours resting. Now, wouldn't that be nice in an ideal world? Hey, if you left your work at work, but in real life, we come home and we also have to work at home. We have to clean and cook and make whatever we have to do, right? But it's just something nice to think about. So let's see how can we schedule time to build our well-being and create balance for ourselves. Next slide, please. There are many, many models of well-being out there, but for today's session, I thought it appropriate for us to use this one, which is Martin Seligman's model of well-being. He is known as the founder of positive psychology, which looks at what are our strengths, what are our assets, what can we use to build what is good in our lives. And his model can be understood quite simply as the acronym PERMA plus. And plus, I've put it into the word PONS. It's fine, that's fine. You can skip the slide. I'm going to go through it in the slides. Now, I don't have a lot of time to explain each slide. My bell's going to ring soon. That's why I've put in lots of pictures so that you don't have to remember my words, but you can remember the pictures that you see, and that will explain PERMA. So the P in PERMA is for positive emotion. Very often, we all experience lots of emotions during the day. But sometimes they are negative all the time, negative, 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 negative. So if you do a little emotions check-in and you feel, oh, I've been negative, my feelings have been down for so long, what can I do to lift my spirits and bring in some positive emotion? Spend time with a friend, have a chat with a learner that you're concerned about at school, take a walk in the park, have a cup of coffee, just create some time to feel good. Next one, please. The E in PERMA stands for engagement. Now, this is really loving what you do. Have you ever spent time doing something and then you didn't notice that time passed? You were just doing it and suddenly you realized 2-3 hours have passed? That is engagement. That's when you experience flow in what you are doing. Now, if you love what you do, then that's how you're going to feel every day. It's going to increase your well-being. Mother Teresa said, I don't do great things, but I do small things with great love. And every day in your class, you have an opportunity to do small things with great love that is possibly going to change the life of a child. What happens with us is we get caught up between what is urgent and what is important. So the urgent things are the ATPs, the curriculum, that this I have to do and all the million things that you have to do. But the things that really bring joy to your life are the important things, the connecting, the quiet time, the chatting with someone, the catching your breath, the relationships that you have, the people that are important to you. Those are the important things. And having said that, this is something that Prof. Khumalo spoke about. It's about what's happening relationally in our classes. You're a human. The children in your class are humans. You have the same needs, the same fears, the same vulnerabilities. You are just people. And if you can find a beautiful place to connect and meet each other as people, knowing that people are different. Some are noisier than others, some are smarter than others, some are wiser than others, and just accepting those differences. So maintaining a healthy classroom begins with cultivating healthy relationships. And we know that in a class, it's important to be firm, but it's also important to be kind and firm. It's the difference between being assertive and aggressive. I hope you've taken some time to capture that little heart there with all the beautiful respect, acceptance, laughter, the things that make relationships healthy and beautiful. Next slide, please. That was the R in PERMA. The M is for meaning. What gives purpose to your life? So as humans, we are all searching for meaning. What am I doing here? Why am I here? And Pablo Picasso said something beautiful. He said, the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. Now, not everybody has the opportunity to do that. Some people are trapped behind a computer every day. And yet they have gifts and blessings that they've brought to earth, but they can't share them with anyone. You, on the other hand, you are in a classroom with other people and vulnerable and people who are open to learning, who are growing. If you find your gift and you ask yourself, what do I want to bring into the world? What do I want to leave more of? And leave it with your children every day, and your families and all the people who are connected with you. That is what's going to give meaning in your life, which will immediately improve your feeling of worth and purpose. Next one, please. The A in PERMA stands for accomplishment, aspiration, achievement. We all have goals we'd like to achieve. For all of you, there's that one holiday trip you'd like to take. There's that one child in your class that you're concerned about that's just not keeping up, and you want to stop and take that child by the hand and say, let me help you. How can I help you? Let's read together during break. Do you need me to explain this to you another time? And those are goals that you have the creative power to achieve. And when you've achieved them, immediately you're going to feel good about yourself, because you've accomplished something important something worthwhile, and something that's made a contribution to yourself and to another human being. Next one, please. We're now entering the PONS part. I'm going to speed through these because you already know them. It's physical activity. You need to keep your body active. You need to believe that you can do the things you want to do, and you need to maintain a positive outlook on your life and be hopeful that whatever it is that is difficult can be overcome. You can do it. You have time, you have resources, you have love in your heart, you have an amazing job. And so to just hold on to that optimism, remember PONS, P was physical activity, O is optimism. Let's look at what's N. Nutrition. You can't go anywhere if there's no fuel in your tank. So you need food, you need water, you need good whole food, and you need to keep your mental, emotional, spiritual body going, your body going. So the N is nutrition. Thank you. Next one, please. And the S is for sleep. Now, do you know that you can live longer without food than you can without sleep? In fact, sleep has been used as a form, sleep deprivation, preventing people from sleeping has been used as a form of torture. When you sleep, you have an opportunity to recharge your battery. What happens to your cell phone when you haven't charged it for a day? Battery dies. And that's you too. You need to charge that battery every day by beautiful, calming, restorative sleep. Next slide, please. So if you remember those 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. Sometimes we can experience wakeful rest. We don't have to be sleeping, but that is when we have a quiet time where we can pray or meditate or reflect on what we're grateful for. Reflect on what are our dreams for the future. Reflect on who are the children in our classes who need us the most and how can we show up for them and be there for them. That is your moment of quietude where you go inside, you know, this is the gift I can bring and this is how I can bring it and this is how I improve the quality of my life. You bring a sense of calm and connection to yourself. Next one, please. And then the medicine of all medicines, which is nature. We all need natural light, soil, grass, water, air. So if you are feeling like your battery is running a bit low, tank is empty, sometimes you just need to lay down on the grass, or sometimes you just need to play in the sand with your own children or your friends or yourself or the children at school. Play in some water, take off your shoes and be grounded by the earth. These sound we don't often think about these things, but they are magical in terms of rejuvenating our energies. Classrooms become very stuffy, congested places. Sometimes maybe if you feel that your class need a bit of a break, take them outside, sit on the grass, have your lesson in a nice circle where you all are having a chat and sharing together. It will immediately shift the energy in your classroom and make you all feel a little bit better about yourselves in that moment. Thank you. Next one, please. I hope I still have time to read this little poem to you. It's a reflection. Oh, okay. It's a reflection that was written by Dr. Hemgenel. And he says, I've come to a frightening conclusion. I am the decisive element in the classroom. He's reflecting here as a teacher because he was a teacher. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or honor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that will decide whether a crisis will be escalated or resolved. A child humanized or dehumanized. You can find this on the internet if you just remember Dr. Hemgenel. So on that note, I would like to leave you with this thought. No fights from the language teachers, please. Education is important. But you, your families, your partners, your children in your class, your children in your home, your children in your street, all the people in your life are importanter than any education. So build and value those relationships that connection, and it will make everything else in your life feel a little easier. They say that when we feel good, we function well. Next one, please. So thank you for investing time in your well-being this afternoon. It was lovely spending time with you. I know I was a little bit fast, but hopefully you can access this presentation somewhere and you can take your time and read through it in your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Feldman. That was such a great advice, and your insights are so invaluable. Before we continue, I would like to remind the teachers that at the end of the meeting, we have a survey, a compulsory survey that you need to do, that will be submitted to SACE as you attended. Prof. Khumalo, Mzilikazi Amashowana, I would like you to join us for a panel discussion. Prof. Khumalo?
Yes, Ms.
Okay.
Mdunge. Yeah.
What a very incredible stories and wisdom we've had today. The common denominator I can see is the role of clear communication and how we help teachers to build positive relationship with their learners in the classroom. So now we'd like to ask you a few questions based on your presentations. Dr. Feldman, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So now I want to take few questions, maybe about 2 or 3 because of time from teachers. Teachers, if you have a question, can you please raise your hand? Okay, while our audience are collecting their questions, I have some of my own for Dr. Khumalo. Dr. Khumalo?
Yes, yes. Mdunge.
What have you found new teachers struggle with the most, and what advice will you give those teachers? What advice can you give them?
Yeah, I think the challenge that schools do have is that there's unruly learners who sometimes confront teachers, and then we have seen newspapers about teachers who are, learners who are also confronting teachers and also trying to fight teachers against. Because of the challenge of the drug society in the country, which we have to say that, especially in high schools and grade 6 and 7 learners currently, some of them are high. I've encountered teachers who are indicating that the learners of today are so difficult. But as I indicated, that is very, very important that you establish a relationship with a learner who's very problematic. You, as I indicated in my presentation, never try to embarrass a learner before others. So rather try to understand what are the issues. I'll always advise that if, for an example, in a township, if you are not staying far from the learners, you can then try to go and find out. It's an extra mile that you take as a teacher, but sometimes it's a little bit farther. So it is important that you find out, because there are psychological issues, child-headed families, and quite a number of things, because we need to go to the root of the cause of the behavior of this learner. Because once you diagnose the problem, you are able to intervene appropriately. Because once you shout because of frustration and other things, it's going to create problems. But also important, there are sister departments that as a teacher you can work with through the office of the principal. You can then try to engage social development, social workers. You can try to engage psychologists, because remember, a teacher is an expert in the content and might not have knowledge of certain behavioral issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prof. Khumalo. Thank you so much. That is very useful, and I'm hoping that will assist teachers in the classroom very, very well. Teachers, you still don't have a question? Okay, I have another question myself for Dr. Beverley. Dr. Beverley, what is the connection between the teacher wellness and good classroom management? And what advice would you give to new teachers in this regard?
Yes, absolutely. So the challenges in the classroom are huge and the demands are huge. But if as a teacher, you are personally not in a good space, if you're struggling with yourself, you are maybe depressed, anxious, not very happy, you're not going to be in the best position to create an anchor in your class for learners to draw strength from. So let's think of it as your tank that I spoke about. If your well-being is low, and we know that in life today, many people's well-being is low, right? That is why we have to really make every effort to improve our well-being, to fill our tanks. So if your tank is empty, there is nothing that you can pour. If you think of your learners as a garden of seeds, you have nothing to pour to help them germinate and grow. But if your tank is full and you are investing in yourself, your own well-being, your own mental health, your physical health, your emotional and spiritual health, then you are in a better position to just be present in your class for your learners. Sometimes they just need you to be present. And when you are just present and connected, then maybe you will be able to see, well, I can't do this. I need this kind of resource, or I need that kind of resource. We know that we are under-resourced in the schools. Prof. Khumalo is talking about sometimes using people from other disciplines to support us and to network with us. But we know that those resources are in short supply. But I do think that sometimes teachers can also find that community of strength among each other in their own schools, where you can go to a neighbor and say, I am just not doing okay right now. Can you maybe just fill in for me for a second, or have someone to talk to during break and say, well, what can we do? We are all five of us struggling with learners who are having very difficult experiences at home. And how can we create something for them that they need right now? Maybe someone to talk to, maybe just a pat on the shoulder, an understanding ear, or someone who says, come and sit with me and tell me what's going on in your life. And those relationships have an uncanny way of sometimes dissolving some of those difficulties. I hope that answers you.
Yeah, it answers me, Dr. Beverley. Dr. Khumalo, don't you have any question for Dr. Beverley? Prof. Khumalo?
Sorry, yeah, thank you very much, Mdunge. Yeah, it's very critical, the issue that Dr. Beverley is coming with, the issue. So another important fact that you've said, Dr. Feldman, about teachers building each other, talking to each other, share the challenges that you have with your learners in class, because if you approach it together, it's better, and therefore use it to encourage one another. And then we have seen quite a number of issues where, like I've indicated, learners, at some point I had a chat with one of the teachers where the young learner was sitting at the back, and then he could not write when they were given maths classwork. And then the teacher was brilliant enough to approach the learner and said, what is your problem? And the teacher found out that the learner every day comes to school in the morning without having taken anything in his or her stomach. You see, now it's a very serious problem. It's a problem of eating. And the teacher, like Beverley's indicated, spoke to another teacher in trying to find out what is he or she experiencing from the same learner. And it was, the teacher did not know that, but the teacher have to indicate that he was too harsh for that learner without knowing that the learner has got a resource, a challenge problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much. We have a question from one of the educators. I'm hoping one of you will answer, or Dr. Beverley, can you answer this question from the teacher, new teacher? She's asking, what do you do with destructive habits in order to protect the academic agenda where the ATP is fully loaded with work and assessments, especially at high school level, and even more in grade 12s? Dr. Beverley, can you hear the question?
Absolutely. Yes. So I think we know that the curriculum is quite loaded, and we know that there's pressure to complete, and particularly in grade 12, where you don't have the entire year before students need to take examinations. But I do think that the teacher needs to take that control and influence that I spoke about and first connect.
Yeah.
You know, in research done with teachers often say, we feel so bad for the children we leave behind, but we don't have time to go back and fetch them where they are. We need to just keep moving forward, because at the end of the term, we must account. Our books are checked, our ATPs are checked, and we must account for whether we've covered curriculum. And that eliminates the child from the equation. The child then just becomes a subject that you need to deliver the curriculum to, so that you can say, I did my job. But is that your real job? Your real job is to educate that child. And that child is not just there for your cognitive stimulation and mental and content and subject. The child is there for you to connect with as a person. Feelings, mind, body, spirit, all of those parts. And so I think that it is within the teacher's power to pause and say, today, I'm listening to you as a child, as a person. What do you need from me? Let's forget about the subject for a minute, or present the subject. I'm by no means suggesting neglect the curriculum, because it's important. But the child is important. I want to say that. Right. Don't forget that that is also part of what you're there to do. So if the children are left behind, and yes, they are struggling socially with gangsterism, addiction, problematic home environments, and many of them need support from their school environment. And the school has always been that space in the community where children go for caregiving, for looking after, for connecting with. I hope that answers the student's question. If there's a part, the teacher's question, if there's a part I've missed, please just remind me what it is.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beverley. Prof. Khumalo, I have another question for you from the new teacher. The teacher is saying, what to do if I have learners who is having behavioral issues, and I try to engage parents, and only to find out that the mother is from a very abusive family. I engaged the social worker and sent her to psychologist, but the mother is really reluctant to support the child. Now, how can I help the child? Prof. Khumalo, did you hear the question?
Yes, I hear the question. It's a very difficult problem, and it's very frustrating. I must indicate that I come from a background as a former principal and 24 years experience in the teaching field, and you do have such learners, and then because now it's a family problem which is now transferred into the schooling context, and you have tried to sort out the problem. And when the learner is highly disruptive and then disrupting the academic agenda, it is I should believe that the school do have the policies around code of conduct of learners. And then when you have done all you have done as a teacher, and then now also engaging your senior, and then you have got evidence that the psychologists have intervened and other stakeholders, it is important that learners must also take responsibility of their behaviors. There's now consequences, because it's very, very important, because you cannot babysit a troublesome learner forever. Because remember, like Dr. Beverley was indicating, that building the learner into totality. But at the end of the day, the rules of the school must kick in now. The code of conduct for school must then take in with evidence that we have tried 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because we shall have make sure that we have reports from psychologists, we have reports from engagement with all stakeholders, we've got evidence. And therefore, when there is no improved behavior, there should be consequences. But the intention, remember, the department has also got its own way that the learner cannot be expelled, but there should be consequences. Maybe the learner will be transferred to another school where he is suitable to that school. But I don't know whether I've tried to answer. You can, Dr. Beverley can add. Thanks.
I just have a question. If I may ask, did you say that the mother was abusive? And so
Yes.
even yeah, please
Yes,
check.
the question. Yes, the mother is coming from a family, an abusive family.
But is the child abused?
Can I read the question again, Doctor?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
The teacher is asking what to do if I have learners if I have a learner who have a behavioral issues and I try to engage the parent and only to find out that the mother is from a very abusive family. I engaged the social worker and sent her to the psychologist, but the mother doesn't support the child. How can I help the child?
Yes, absolutely. I think many teachers find that it is the home environment that is creating the bigger problem for the learner, and the school is almost powerless to intervene in the home environment. Now, if all our systems spoke to each other, then exactly as Prof. Khumalo says, you should be able to pick up the phone and say, there is a problem here. This learner is impacted. Can social services perhaps get involved? Perhaps the learner needs to maybe be put into a support program, or perhaps the learner can be appointed a social worker, and the family can go through family therapy, perhaps with a social worker. So we know that those systems exist, but they don't necessarily always speak to each other, and they don't necessarily always support each other. So it falls to the school to deal with the issue. So yes, I understand the question, but I think if it is possible, if you can engage supportive services, the clinic, if you have child welfare or any social services in your community, engage them and say, how can we support this family? Speak to the mother and say, we understand your context is difficult, but how can we support you so that we support your child? Sometimes parents also need education. Sorry, I talk a lot. Sometimes parents also need education about what their children need, because they don't come with a manual. We don't know. We try our best as parents, but we do sometimes get it wrong. Now I'm done.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I hope the teacher is being answered. And also thank you so much, Prof. Khumalo. A reminder to the teachers, we have a survey that I spoke about that is very important that you need to do at the end of our meeting. A final thank you to our guest speakers today, Prof. Khumalo. Thank you so much. And also Dr. Beverley. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, a reminder that the recording from today will be emailed to you and available on YouTube. Our next webinar will be on the 28th of September 2023. I hope you are getting the date, 28th September 2023. So stay tuned for that one. Until we meet again, we wish you all the best. Bye.